This video is brought to you by Squarespace. As we all know, the final full week of January every single year is Goblin Week. And to celebrate, I thought it would be extra fun to convert the new Space Hobbit Sniper Kit into a Space Goblin Sniper Kit. So today I'm going to show you that entire process, give you some helpful tips on the kit bashing, the painting, as well as showing off a few other goblins that both myself and the Howl Painting Club over on Discord got painted during the most mischievous and adorable week of every single year, Goblin Week. So getting straight to work, I started building all the hobbits straight from the normal instructions, building the basic bodies, but leaving off the heads and any other parts I knew I wanted to replace eventually, while at the same time searching through my bits box for spare goblin parts. And surprisingly, this was an incredibly easy conversion to do. The hardest part was finding the right heads to fit the right bodies, but aside from a head swap, most of these models fit the tone and proportions of standard Games Workshop Space Goblins pretty well. The only main differences I noticed between the sculpts is that goblins on average have smaller feet with one less toe, then hobbits and goblin hands are a little bit bigger, but not with one less finger. So for many of these, I liked the hobbit sculpt so much that I just did a simple head swap, while for others I swapped out a weapon arm, added a pauldron, extra decorative bit, but it was a pretty easy process overall. The hardest part perhaps was making the heads fit in natural looking ways, and I have 2 tips for making this work a little bit better. My first tip is to cut off their necks. Hobbits have distinct necks, it seems like, where goblins usually do not, or the necks are covered up by the rest of their heads, if you know what I mean. So cutting off the necks helped the heads look more correct, in my opinion. And number 2, my second tip is to use sprue goo, which we covered in a previous video linked down in the description, or just polystyrene shavings that you melt down with plastic cement to smooth over the relevant sections that need smoothing. If you're curious, the kit that I ended up using the most by far for these conversions was the Squig Hopper / Boingrot Bounders kit. This is a kit from Age of Sigmar that is not only an incredible set of sculpts that are fun to paint, but they also come with twice the amount of heads and weapon arms that you need, making this an incredible deal if you plan on doing goblin conversions of any kind in the future. An extra pro tip I have about this kit is if you have ever wanted to play Age of Sigmar's Spearhead mode, which as of this video's publication is considered by many to be the most fun way to play the game, the Boingrot Bounders kit is included as part of that Spearhead. So if you wanted to, you could buy the Gloomspite Git's Spearhead box and have enough extra heads and arms to convert your kill team and still build the entire Spearhead. Or if you don't care about Age of Sigmar, you could buy this big box and convert all of the extra goblins inside into space goblins by giving them the 10 extra guns and arms left over from the Space Hobbit kill team. The Space Hobbit kill team rules also have the option to bring along a few Ogren bodyguards, which I'm just saying these Troggoths included in the Spearhead would also make pretty cool proxies for. Of course, you can also buy the Squig Hopper / Boingrot Bounders kit separately if you don't want any of that extra stuff, or just use any goblin parts you might have lying around. So I used a lot of heads from the Squig Hoppers kit, I used a few from the Squig Herders kit, the Squig kit, I used a few of the Squig Herder heads from that kit, and I also used 2 of the spare heads from the Mangler Squigs kit. There's a lot of cool heads in that kit, as well as the Ork Airplane kit. I didn't buy any of these kits specifically for this conversion, I just had the spare bits lying around, and I wouldn't encourage you to buy a kit just to get some goblin heads either. One of the heads in the airplane kit I found to be especially useful, as he is wearing headphones just like the comms Hobbit is wearing headphones, so it's a super easy head swap that works quite well. But do you know what else is an especially useful thing that works quite well? That's right, it's this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website design and hosting platform that you can use for all of your website needs. And whether you pick from one of their fabulously designed pre-made templates, or just ask their machine spirits to build you a custom template from scratch, 11 out of 10 goblins have told me that the whole process is extremely easy to use with no coding or technical knowledge required. The goblins over here at Howl Corp have been working extra hard on our very own Squarespace site, where we've been hosting a gallery of our painted miniatures, all of our painting reference documents, as well as an online store that accepts a variety of online payment options. So if you need a website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Dana Howell for 10% off your very first purchase of a website or domain. And now back to our video. So as I was saying, one of the heads in the airplane kit I found to be especially useful, as the comms Hobbit is wearing headphones and has this cord running from it, so having a goblin that is also wearing headphones worked just perfectly, I think, in this situation. As I am going to be using the rules from the Hobbit kill team to run these goblins when I'm playing kill team, so I tried my best to keep each unit identifiable for what it's going to do in game. But speaking of rules, as I mentioned before, I also want to use these as a unit of basic Gretchen for my Ork Army. And to do this, there is one additional model we are going to need that's not included in the kill team, and that is the unit leader, which is called a runt herder. And personally, I kind of hate the idea of runt herders. It implies that the orcs kind of herd the goblins around and kind of use them for unpaid labor, where in my headcanon, I much prefer the idea that the goblins and orcs are little buddies with each other and they work together in the army rather than one dominating the others. So instead of a runt herder, I thought I would have a sort of goblin captain or something on a larger base. And I have this quite intimidating goblin knight on a squig laying around from a Warhammer Underworld set that I never finished painting, and as it's the same base size as a runt herder, I thought it would work perfectly. I replaced his weapon arm with a big gun using parts from the Ork airplane kit, gave him one of the spare backpacks from the Hobbit kit, as well as a scope from one of the Hobbit sniper rifles, and called it a day. One of the other things we're going to need to run this as a kill team is a quote-unquote battle mutt, but as cute as this guy is, I think it actually makes more sense to save this pup for another project and replace him here with a squig. For painting these little guys, I used a very similar process as I used for the orcs in my larger Ork army. So if you want a more in-depth dive on my reasoning for the colors and techniques I'm using here, feel free to check that video out for the full explanation, linked down in the description. But surprisingly, I did end up deviating quite a lot from that scheme for these goblins. So I'll take you through the process quickly and tell you all of the different choices I made on these goblins versus on the orcs. Like with the orcs, I started off with a simple black prime, a spray of mahogany from above, and a spray of jade from below. And right away we have our first deviation from the orc workflow. Instead of using the P3 metallics as I described in that video, I thought I would test out the two new metallics from the army painter John Blanche line that they sent me for review. What can I say? I was making the John Blanche video at the same time as I was painting these goblins, so it just made sense to use these as test models. I dry brushed on this new coppery gold color first, and then followed up with the new dull silver color just to hit all of the high points. And overall, I'm not sure which version I like more, the Army Painter or the P3, but I have to say these two metallics in combination are definitely a solid contender for a really classic grimdark metallic look. I liked this simple 5-step recipe for starting off these models so much that I started applying these 5 steps to the new kill team terrain as a break between the goblins. And I have to say, I really like how these simple steps look on a terrain set. It's a simple, quick process that looks great on the tabletop, and I hope to eventually do the whole set of kill team terrain from this season like this eventually. But anyway, moving on, I used the same method for the goblin skin that I used for the orcs, starting off with a base coat of red and then applying various green paints from my collection on top of that, making sure to leave some red in the recesses. I also painted a few parts of the models red as I did this. As you well know, red is a really prominent color on my Ork army, so to set the goblin half of the army apart, I thought I would take some inspiration from my previous goblin air force and lean more into the yellows on these models than the reds. So I still painted on a few red details, but I just made sure to make yellow the more common color among the models to set them apart. In some places, I used the classic ochre yellow that I used for the orcs, but more and more often I found myself reaching for the yellow and orange brown included in the John Blanche paint set. When combined, I think these two colors make a really fun gradient that can be used to shade up some really great saturated non-metallic metal gold rims on the goblin's armor. I also freehanded some striped shirts on a few of the goblins as an Easter egg reference to another one of my goblin projects from a few years ago. And aside from all this, the steps in the painting process were pretty much identical to the orcs. Close to the end of painting these models, I realized that I left one of these fascist symbols on the goblin guns. This was extremely silly of me, as of course we all know that every goblin is staunchly anarcho-socialist and are known to stamp out the roots of authoritarianism wherever they find them. So I decided to stop what I was doing and carve these foul symbols off of the guns wherever I could find them. I made sure to leave a little X in their place instead of giving them a clean carved off look to make it really clear that the goblins carved these symbols off themselves. These are looted guns from the Imperial faction, and once this was done, I painted a little pattern back over them to make them look cool. And that's pretty much it. I'm really happy with how these goblins turned out. This was a super fun project to engage with during Goblin Week. I definitely didn't get these done before the end of the week. I probably painted them for 2.5 weeks over time. But during Goblin Week, I also painted these 3 Moria goblins from Lord of the Rings. That's my Middle-earth model quota for the year, as well as this little ammo runt that I've been meaning to paint for a while. Thanks to everyone who painted along with us during Goblin Week this year. This was a really fun holiday to celebrate together, and it was fun to make it a little bit of a community thing. You can see some of the contributions to our Goblin Week channel on our Discord server going by on the screen right now. Our Discord server is of course one of the exclusive perks over at the Howl Corp Patreon. I think we've built a really nice inclusive community over there. So thank you so much to all of our patrons for your ongoing support, and if you'd like to join in our community over there, you can do so over at patreon.com/DanaHowl. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to paint some goblins this week if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. And by the way, if you're wondering why I didn't paint the squigs in this video, I thought it might be more fun to save those for February 25th.